There's nothing that I wouldn't do. But there's something in the way I act around you, around you, around you. But there's something in the way I act around you, the way I feel about you. Nothing I wouldn't do.
Every time I head back you, every time I head back you.
You got the bad power, sweet as apple. You won't cut me loose. There's nothing that I wouldn't do.
Every time I head back you, every time I head back you.
You got the mad power, sweet as apple. So how could I refuse? There's nothing that I wouldn't do.
Every time I head back you.
That was a new singer from Finland called Alma with her song Dye My Hair Blonde. She's making some really great pop music at the minute, so you should definitely go and check her out. There's an abundance of events taking place across the county this year to celebrate Culture Night on the 22nd of September. Here's just some of the best that we're really looking forward to. The world premiere takes place of Busyness, a site-specific performance by Kim McCafferty. Physical theatre will be taken to new levels with contemporary circus, dance and comedy created for the performance at the Conn Smythe Park at 6:30pm. Afterwards, journey back to the Johnston Central Library for an evening of storytelling and entertainment with Eddie Lenihan and the Armagh Rhymers. The Town Hall Cavan Arts Space presents the Automated Orchestra by Robbie Perry. From 8pm, visit the Town Hall and experience a punk opera, a new performance featuring an interactive musical exhibition created from recycled materials and repurposed objects, spoken word and opera singing. The Rammer Theatre features The Lost Brothers and an art exhibition entitled 93 Years of Inspiration from 7 till 10pm. In Cavan House Drung, owners Ian and Rachel Elliott invite visitors to experience a night of words and music with poet Heather Breath and violinist Rafał Zydlowski. The event starts at 7:30pm. In the Cootehill Library, actor Larry McCluskey will be reading Lone Wolf, a one-act play by Cavan playwright John McManus, from 8:30pm. And the Virginia Show Centre presents a multicultural evening where everyone can experience the heritage, singing, dancing and culture of communities from Zimbabwe, Lithuania, Latvia and many more. It takes place from 5:30 till 6:45pm. Don't forget, all events on Culture Night are completely free. To find out more, just visit culturenight.ie or cavanarts.ie. Footsbarn Theatre Company are an international touring theatre company based in France. They are famed worldwide for their modern adaptations of Molière and Shakespeare using extravagant costume and makeup mixed with farcical circus-style acting to update their classic texts. They pitched their circus tent in Cootehill a few weeks ago and did shows throughout the week for the Arts Festival to a great reception. I chatted to Freddie, their props and costume maker, administrator and all-round theatre pro, to talk about life on the road and keeping their work relevant to a modern audience. So you're doing 4 shows across the week,
Yes.
Which is quite an impressive feat.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about the shows?
Well, we've played, and it's in fact 2 different shows, but on 4 days. So the first 2 days we just finished performing what it's called Cuckoo's Nest. It's an adaptation of the cult novel of Ken Kesey that was written in the 60s, and that he's seen as a figure of the counterculture on the west coast of America. And it's an amazing book. He wrote it very young, but the insight into the psychiatric world and just generally the human insight is very rich. So it enabled us to ride. We adapted lifted the dialogue from the book, but then the description of the characters really fed the actors as well. And also there's a whole atmosphere in the book that is really, very rich material for adaptation. So we've been touring this show for 3 years and we love it. It has a very deep effect on. We tried to do because of the subject matter, we tried to do a comical as we could, because there is a lot of comedy in the book, but we don't avoid the tragedy. So towards the end of the show, it becomes a real tragedy, and people are very moved by it. Tonight and tomorrow we play Mingling with Molière, which is, we've chosen 2 farces that are around the same theme of man, woman. It's the story, the first one, The Forced Marriage, is the story of an old bachelor who can't decide whether he wants to marry this young woman or not. And so he goes around asking all his friends. He meets 2 philosophers, gypsies, devils, and no one really gives him a straight answer. Then he has real doubts and decides to pull out. But the family won't have it, the father of the bride and the brother, basically. He's forced into it, so it's called The Forced Marriage. And the second one is about jealousy, and in fact, Molière wrote it before The Forced Marriage, but it's a very good sequel to The Forced Marriage because they're married, and he's a tyrant and she's fed up, so she's unfaithful. She's got a young lover. And it's the play. It's like I suppose it's the balance of power between husband and wife, and he tries to trick her, and in the end she tricks him. So we've made it into one play. There's 2 plays. It's 2 short farces, which we've made into one play, and it's a very new show. We've only performed it 3 times in France, and now this is a world premiere because it's the first time in English in Cootehill.
Oh, wow, excellent.
So they're busy learning their lines still, the actors, and rehearsing. It's very fresh show, but the public loved it in France. So.
And you said, like, you usually do Molière and Shakespeare, more kind of classical texts. And what inspired you to take on the more recent, I guess, novel?
Well, we've always tried to, do a mixture. The reason we don't do more modern playwrights is the copyright, not the copyright problem, but the fact you don't have the same freedom of adaptation. And a lot of authors want, like Beckett, all this, there's a lot of restrictions. We're very respectful to the authors, but we like to have freedom in how we adapt it. Shakespeare has got such a universal reach, and the problems of that, mankind basically hasn't changed. Nothing's changed. All the problems between people are the same.
Because you use, in your shows, you use quite elaborate costumes.
Yes.
And makeup. And it is a more, even the acting style, it's farcical.
Yes. Well, the reason for this is we left, originally the Footsbarn Theatre was based in Cornwall in England, and it started in 1971, and in first touring very locally and then a little bit more, and then going abroad. Then there was just this desire to go on a world tour, to take the tent. By then we were equipped with tent, caravans, trucks. We set out to do a 5-year world tour, and we're still on it basically 40 years later.
40 years later, yeah.
We had to develop things that was less text-based, It was always a very physical form of theatre because a lot of the actors come from the Jacques Lecoq School in Paris that is physical theatre. And so there was that approach, but there was a lot of jokes and ad-libs in English that didn't work, obviously, with foreign accents. So we continued playing in English, but developed a very visual style, and also music. Live music took a very important part.
And do you use the costumes and kind of other ways of communicating them that aren't language?
Yes, it's to try, because archetypes are universal, so people recognise them in masks. And obviously, if you push the style, we found when travelling that we're much closer to Eastern European actors are still very expressive, We play to all sorts of crowds in the countryside and in Africa and India.
And is that a reason as well why you stick with text, doing adaptations of text that will translate universally?
Yes. But Cuckoo's Nest we've been wanting to do for a while now. It was always, and it seemed like it's so relevant still because it's really about the oppression of the individual being sacrificed to what Ken Kesey calls the machine of society, which basically drives people to be formatted and all behave in a way that helps the government run. And Murphy is a rebel, he's a rogue. And we felt rogues still have a very important part in society because they push the limits and they question, they question the established order. So Murphy's in that kind of lovable rogue category, I suppose. And we feel they're an important part of society, aren't they?
The life that Footsbarn have is very anti the norm. To be a travelling
anti-establishment.
theatre group is very anti-establishment.
Yeah, I suppose we're kind of left over. We're kind of a Jurassic remains of the 70s. But it was a movement that started then and it's continued, and we're all paid the same. We're collective, and we try to stick to that.
And what would you say
structure.
are probably the biggest challenges today of being a touring theatre company?
For us, it's our infrastructure is big and heavy and costly, and we don't really have the means. Because between owning a tent, the maintenance, the insurances on the truck, the repair, our trucks are so old, and they're likely to break down every journey. Paying heavy goods drivers, all these things, and also we have a base, a really amazing farm, which we did up ourselves, and it's a place for residency. A lot of other artists come there, we give workshops, and that has a cost, obviously. So between that and the travelling, we're finding it very hard to make ends meet.
But there must be some advantages and benefits as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, the great part is we are our own producers. We don't always decide, but we choose where we want to go. And the fantastic thing is we are in our own space to perform, which is to us a much more interesting in terms of dynamics of movement on stage, and B, better way to get close to your audience, to be intimate with your audience. And we have a lot of people, because the aim of the company was always to reach out to rural areas and go to where there are no theatres and find people who never go to the theatre. And because we're in a tent, we often get people thinking they're going to see something circusy coming in and saying, this is my first time in the theatre and I loved it, So that is one of the great advantages of having your own tent, and it's great.
Do you find that there is still an audience, still a captive audience out there?
Yeah, there is. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. No, in Ireland, people remember us because we came in the early 80s, the very first Galway festival. It was Footsbarn with Ollie Jennings on his bicycle, and we played Cork, but Waterford, Dublin, Sligo, and Galway a lot, and Cootehill. We've been coming here since '91, and we developed a very strong, almost family ties, with people here. So,
and what's your impression of Ireland and Irish audiences throughout the years?
Oh, they're great. They're very responsive, curious, enthusiastic, all the things you'd wish for the public to be, really.
And so Footsbarn started out in Cornwall in 1971.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you've travelled all over the world.
So we did 10 years based in Cornwall. Then we left, and we had a truly nomadic period from 81 till, let's say, 1990, 10 years of being really nomadic, not having. And then we bought the base that we have now in the middle of France. And
why France? Why did you decide to settle in France?
Because in the 80s and 90s, we were actually just, because we live in caravans, work in a tent, and we love the Mediterranean, culture, climate, obviously, lifestyle, everything. We were actually aiming for first Italy, then Portugal, Spain, and we didn't really get the support we needed from the authorities to do it. And then we came to France, and we just had to meet someone who who worked after the war for the decentralization of culture in France, taking it out of theatres, out of Paris, who completely just flashed on Footsbarn and